You're watching Business Breakfast coming to you live from iBrandTV studios here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. Well, the number of people affected by hunger globally rose to as many as 828 million in 2021, an increase of about 46 million since 2020 and 150 million since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is according to the latest UN State of Food Security and Nutrition 2022 report that the world is moving further away from its goal of ending hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition in all its forms by 2030. A 2022 edition of the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report represents update on the food security and nutrition situation around the world, including the latest estimate of the cost and affordability of a healthy diet. Now, for further analysis, Mr. Sumbo Badejo is a public affairs analyst. He joins us now virtually. Thank you for your time, Mr. Sumbo. Yeah. Well, the number of people affected by these statistics, according to UN, rose as much as 828 million people in 2021. And that's, of course, an increase of 46 million since 2020. And, of course, since the pandemic started, the report shows that about 150 million has also been added to that statistics as well. How disturbing is this report? Talk to us about it.
Very disturbing because if you look at that figure, the main reason why it shot up, that's for the report, is the pandemic. Now we have another problem that is at hand, talking about the war in Ukraine, meaning that by the time the evaluation of the effect of the war is done properly, they will have an increase in that figure. Where it becomes a source of concern is the fact that zero hunger is one of the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And there's a target year of 2030 for that to be achieved. Now we're in 2022, 8 years to come from now. We are supposed to have zero hunger. So how do you now bring that figure, close to 1 billion people globally, down to zero within the period of 8 years? Especially when you still have a security situation, where you still have conflict here and there, where you still have bad weather conditions, climate changes and all of that are still very much active. That means governments at all levels, globally, need to really put hands together. Because if you look at the statistics critically, it's actually one region than the other, and Africa being the most affected, followed by the Latin American countries. So these countries incidentally fall below the hemisphere, and of course are more of a tropical region of the world, meaning that they are supposed to have arable land for agricultural purposes, but they are still most affected due to conflict situation, due to bad governance in all the countries of these regions. And that is why if you had the figures that are being generated from this region together, those are the reason why if you had that to the global average compared to in North America, where it's just 2.6%, and even that 2.6%, it is Mexico and the Caribbean countries that will hit that figure, not US and Canada. So these are things that it's like the other part of the world are becoming a burden on the developed countries. And it all borders to bad governance in all these countries because they are not really affected as much as these other advanced nations in terms of global warming and climate change. They still have other arable lands that they can use for agricultural purposes. But most of these nations are still rely on subsistence mode of farming, which is not making them to grow enough food to tackle this hunger problem.
So just to be clear, you are saying that the advanced economies are not affected as much as we have in the developing countries?
Not as much, because they have advanced. They have developed so many technological means of growing their food. They have what we call genetically modified food items. They have developed they worked on seedlings, they've worked on even some other tuber crops to the extent that they've reduced the gestation period of all these food items to like half. What do I mean by that? We have some crops that the normal gestation period is like between a year to 2 years. Because of the genetically modification that has been done by these advanced countries, all these have been reduced to like 6 months to a year, meaning that within the normal gestation period, they would have had a cycle of 2 harvests. And all these are not really in existence within Africa, for instance. Then other activities taking place in Africa. If you want to pick Nigeria now, let's just use Nigeria as a case study because we are in Nigeria. Look at the way the country is landscape. Most of the states in the north are the ones that grow food items that supplies to other states in the south and the rest of the country. Now we have in the northeast, Boko Haram. In the northwest, banditry. In the north central, kidnapping is rampant in all of those places, and so many other ethnic, religious, communal clashes put together, which is affecting the farmers mostly. So, and down south, we have lazy government who will not spend much in agriculture. They will rather
let me quickly,
go and
yes, let me just come in here. We're going to extensively, delve into that later. But globally, of course, I know you've mentioned the fact that the pandemic also contributed to that increase or the number that we have at the moment. But if you look at that number specifically, apart from the pandemic, what are the other factors that you think were responsible, or for this increase in the number of the people that are hungry at the moment?
the conflict is a major issue that has contributed to that. Now, before the war in Ukraine started, so many African countries are bedeviled with conflict. Is it Congo Democratic Republic that you want to mention? Is it Ethiopia that is currently engaged in a civil war? Or the other countries are Chad, Mali. We have political instabilities in some countries. All these combined will affect the policies that the local government in all those countries will put in place, or the effort being channeled at agriculture. Then in the countries along the Sahel and the Maghreb region of Africa, for instance, yes, climate change is out there. It's really affecting them because of desertification that is currently affecting those countries. There's more and more desert encroachment. And if you go to countries like Australia, this lack of sufficient rainfall, wildfire is affecting those other countries too. The same thing is applicable to Canada and some parts of the United States. So the only region that you may say is not having wildfire or much effect of conflict will be the European region. And these are countries that do not have enough land for agriculture because they are smaller countries. And only Russia and Ukraine and some other countries within the eastern region of Europe are the ones that are mostly focusing on agriculture. Now, those two countries are at war at the moment, and that is why that region is affected. And the other, the other European countries would do everything because they have the means. They have the means of logistics. They have capital to buy up food supplies from the other regions that could have that is supposed to go around. And that is why we are having problems globally. Apart from just the shortage, when there is reduction in supply, it will push up the price. And that's why the prices of items right now is increasing globally, and inflation level is also currently increasing all over the world. Even regions that are not known to inflation at double digits are beginning to experience it.
All right. Let me quickly show you some tweets because these statistics, of course, was released on Wednesday at the ongoing, conference that is on. The UN conference that is ongoing at the moment. Looking at. So if you look at your screen, you see that tweet. Of course, it's a bit. More tweet again. Different tweets from that particular meeting that is ongoing at the moment. And this report, of course, was jointly published by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. You also have the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, as well. And then you also have UN World Food Program, WFP, and the World Health Organization, WHO. Those are the bodies who came together. But how do you suppose the countries of the world are responding to the challenges of hunger around the world? Yes, you talk about the fact that in some part of Europe, they are also doing their bit as well because of the logistics. So how do you think countries of the world are responding? That's the first question. And if you have to bring it to Nigeria, what lessons do we learn from these other countries who are already responding to this crisis, even though they do not even have the best of weather or conditions in there? Hello, Mr. Sumbo. Well, I was asking Mr. Sumbo how he thinks the countries of the world are responding, especially the fact that the world, the FAO, and of course the conference is looking at the fact that a lot of countries perhaps are drifting away from attending or the core issue, especially, which is of course is supposed to be a priority. It seems that a lot of countries are really drifting far away from the initial goal. 8 years to go, because by 2030, Mr. Sumbo, I don't know if you are there. If you are there, please talk to us.
Yes, I'm there. I've been
okay, so I was asking
clearly.
you that first, how do you suppose these countries are responding to the challenges of hunger around the world? That's first question. The second question is the fact that you talk about that some part of Europe are responding to this just because they have logistics in their advantage and some other factors working for them as well. So what lessons can we learn from these other countries who are already responding when you look at the fact that they don't even have the best of conditions in terms of land mass to address this?
Yes, they don't have the best of conditions, but they have one thing that the other countries like the African regions mostly do not have. They have serious government in place. They have minimal corruption issue, and of course they are focused. Now, even at that, they are still having their own challenges, but they've been able to deploy technology. They've been able to use their wealth to buy up as much surplus as they can, and of course this is working to their advantage. But for countries like Nigeria and other African regions, the lesson to learn there is that we don't have to wait until there is major problem before we begin to make plans. For instance, most African countries are not taking the SDG goals as serious as they should, thereby slowing down the implementation, or what is called the achievement of those Millennium Development Goals in this region, which zero hunger is part of. Now, in Nigeria, if we want to come back home, countries below the Niger really need to understand that they cannot continue to rely on the north alone for the importation of their food. Arable land is also existing in all of this. The only exception we may have are the oil-producing areas, which oil spillage has affected the farmland. But Southwest have no excuse along that line. For instance, states like Ogun State or your state, Ondo State, up to Ekiti State, cannot be complaining about oil spillage because these are not oil-producing states. But they have arable land for agriculture. Agriculture is on the concurrent legislative list in Nigeria, but the government at the state level are not investing enough. Okay. And agriculture is one of the cheapest things that they can invest in, which would, for instance, Nigeria can be supplying West Africa food, which means that we would, as a country, be contributing to the bringing down of the global figure. That is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Because we have the potential to actually achieve that.
Okay, Mr. Sumbo, I want us to quickly take a break. When we come back, you continue on that thought. The fact that Nigeria has the capacity to even supply the rest of the, the West African countries. But then what is it doing about it? I think we will continue from that thought when we come back from this break. You're still watching Business Breakfast. Please stay with us in a moment. Thank you for joining us again. Mr. Asimbo Badejiko is a public affairs analyst, and we're looking at the United Nations Global Hunger Report, which of course says that about 828 million people globally, suffer for hunger. That's what we're looking at, and of course, also assessing that number and the factors responsible for this number. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Badejiko. You were talking just before we went on break. You were trying to highlight the capacity that we can, as a country, Nigeria, can feed the rest of West African countries. Talk to us more about that.
Yes, I was trying to say that if we get our acts together, we can grow enough food to not only feed our 200 million population, but also supply West Africa.
Well, I guess we're having a bit of a challenge again, internet messing up with connection there. But we're looking at, of course, the fact that he was talking about, the fact that Nigeria has the capacity. Yes, Mr. Badejiko.
Yes, because we have good arable land here. If we can overcome our challenges in the security area, we will be able to grow enough food. And when I said that, I mean that the states in below the Niger, I'm talking about southwest region, even southeast, despite the fact that the landmass in that area is a bit small, but states like Cross Rivers can add to that to grow enough food, adding to the ones that will still be coming to the north. And by the time the security situation is addressed, we'll have the full capacity to export food items to African nations. And by the time we are doing that, we will create a kind of competition with the other African nations. And Africa, that is heavily relied on for at least primary source of raw materials globally, will be able to convert to food production and bring down the global figures, thereby ensuring that we are contributing to our own quota towards the achievement of the SDG goal.
Now, the report is also suggesting ways that the governments of countries that should respond to this crisis. First, they are talking about they have to repurpose their current, support to agriculture, and of course also to reduce the cost of healthy diet, and again to maximize the limited public resources available. How applicable is this to Nigeria's situation? Is it applicable here?
It's applicable because our own case is just what I just mentioned. We have huge case of corruption within the sector. Anytime, even the few money that is being voted for agricultural purposes and the little grant we get from donor countries are not actually spent for the purpose they were meant for. And we have some executive farmers that are not on any farmland who will just, because of their connection with the ministries, get the fund, divert for other purposes. These are some of the reasons why we are having, for instance, a recent research shows that for the cultivation of beans, and Oyo is having a huge landmass as big as the entire southeast region, which is made up of 5 states. Now imagine if you apply the principle of...
Hello, Mr. Badejiko. Well, I think Mr. Badejiko was trying to highlight the fact that, there are some states in the southwest that can really take up. Yes, Mr. Badejiko, you were talking about strategies, right?
Yes, I was saying that recent research shows that Oyo State has the best land for the cultivation of beans and cowpeas. I'm saying if you apply the principle of comparative advantage to that, and allowing Oyo State, if the state government is serious enough, to focus fully on the cultivation of beans, meaning that we will not only be supplying the beans that the entire nation will feed on, but also be exporting to the West African sub-region, taking advantage of the ECOWAS protocol, as well as the African Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which Nigeria is a signature to. And we will be making a lot of money from this. It will be huge revenue, not only to the nation, but also to the state in itself. Spill over to Osun State has enough, they have a land that is good enough to cultivate tuber crops, cassava, yam. Go to the to Ekiti, also can cultivate yam. If all these states will take agriculture seriously, and agriculture does not involve huge investment like construction of roads that most of these governments are focusing on. And the main reason why they are focusing on construction is still linked to corruption, because that will huge turnover and is not going to help the masses. You cannot continue to make a nation hungry and you expect them to be creative and productive. When they are having food sufficiency, there will be creativity then. Then that is when the other infrastructure that you are trying to put in place can be made to effective use.
Right. I think we'll have to wrap it up here. Now, I was going to actually ask you, because you talk about the fact that we have 8 more years to go to achieve, zero hunger by 2030. That's a huge task. If you look at the numbers now, at almost a billion people in hunger, people who are in hunger. So that's really, really a huge task, isn't it? But we don't have much time to talk more, but we certainly do have you back again. Thank you so much, Mr. Asumbo Badejiko is a public affairs analyst. We appreciate your time on Business Breakfast. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Well, if you're still watching or joining us, this is Business Breakfast coming to you live from our studios. It's still to come after the break. iBrandTV Food and Market Survey takes a look at the increase in the prices of salarans and foods across the Lagos market as cost of transportation bites harder on motorists ahead of the Eid al-Kabir celebrations. That's our talking point next when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.